the bill that just passed the Kentucky legislature that was vetoed by the governor, and then they overrode his veto, that basically is attempting to end abortion in the state of Kentucky by effectively making it illegal for pharmaceutical companies or telemedicine that have not met someone physically, which like during COVID might have slowed shit down, but it's not going to anywhere else, has set up a couple of rules that somehow they think is going to, effectively make it impossible for people to use it. Here's what this bill actually does. There's a couple of things in it that will be thrown out on medical privacy grounds, but the vast majority of what's in here is gonna do nothing. I'm here to tell you, it's just bureaucratic bullshit that they're trying to create hurdles where they can do gotchas on clinics. And where they try to do that is that they make you fill out a lot of onerous information where you make the woman or the girl sign their name on a document, and you sign it and you show it to them that it's going in some kind of file. And this is supposed to make them think, oh my God, they're going to keep track of the fact that I have an abortion. I won't have privacy a few years from now because it's going to have this. Okay. Most of it applies to underage girls. I mean, all girls are underage, but you get my point. Under the age of 18, minors. And in doing so, they have to keep a record of it for 5 years or 7 years, whichever, 5 years after they turn 18 or 7 years, whichever shorter. And then they throw it out. And also, even in their, you have to understand, these assholes, even in Kentucky, right, HIPAA protects all medical records and they can't bust HIPAA. And they know this. So a lot of this is just trolling. It's just a bunch of bullshit. And so what it's meant to do is it's basically being mean to minors and young women who want to get an abortion. There are a couple of areas in this where like it's about this, the off-label use of pharmaceutical abortion, of mifeprex and mifepristone. And so usually you take these orally separated by, I think, 3 days, and it induces an abortion. And that's what they're concerned about, is because you can actually go on telemedicine, talk to somebody outside the state, they mail it to you. Nobody's the fucking wiser because the mail's nobody's business and HIPAA keeps it quiet. So they passed this law that anybody inside the state has to talk, that you have to talk to somebody physically in the state, which is weird. And I mean, the interstate commerce shit that'll get thrown out about this is just stupid. Can you imagine the impacts this would have on fucking VA medicine about anything else? It's just silly. Like, they're jerking people around. This is bullshit. It's trolling. So what they're talking about is the SHAF methodology of, instead of orally taking mifeprex and mifepristone, you take it vaginally. That it is used in a vaginal suppository form in the same period, and that it can work later in the pregnancy, still within the legal limit, but more effective later in the pregnancy. If you take it orally within the first, say, 2 weeks of a pregnancy, it works fine. And then if you do it with this method, if you don't find out till way late, yes, it's plan B. That's right, Laura. That if you do that, the shaft, yeah, it sounds like shaft, but yeah. So the use, that methodology is not danger-free. No medicine is. All medicines have contraindications and side effects. Contraindications and side effects. And in doing that, there is a, there are some cases, like in every medication, that there's been adverse events. It just happens, right? So they want the doctor to have to tell the person getting this and doing this, whether they do the shaft version or whether they do take it orally, that these dangers exist. They also want to tell them that after the first dose, you can reverse it if you regret it and the child won't pass. You have to take the second dose in time or it won't do anything and the child will live, and most of the time, and all studies, they're fine. So you got to tell them that. And then you also have to tell them that, what was the third thing? You have to offer them. You have to tell them that a lot of women have regrets, which is not statistically true. But the idea is that if any do, you got to let them know. And again, these are those kinds of things that start off very clunky, but then turn into a form and a short talk with your doctor, which, by the way, almost all doctors have this conversation. When you go to Planned Parenthood or any of these things, they do talk. The issue that most of the time anti-abortionists have is that they offer multiple possibilities. They go, have you thought about putting your child up for adoption? Have you had a miscarriage before? It may be possible that you miscarry before the first trimester. We can monitor it. Also, if you want to, you can do this. This is your option. So abortion as an option is spoken of, but in a lot of these situations, that's why the place is called Planned Parenthood. The whole purpose isn't it's not an abortion clinic. That's one of the options. If you're not ready to have a child, and having a child and being prepared for it is kind of crucial. If you don't, then, you might want to have options, right? And a lot of times, people go there and go, they don't even realize because of how these assholes have treated Planned Parenthood over these times, but Planned Parenthood offers a lot of fertility and prenatal care if you want to make sure that you have a baby, right? So, and this is what, like here, whereas in recent years, physicians have developed a method to potentially reverse the effects, potentially, that's a lovely word. I guess you have to tell them potentially. Reverse the effects of mifeprex and mifepristone. This abortion pill reversal or rescue process, has been discussed in a peer-reviewed study, and is based on decades of safe use of progesterone to stabilize and continue pregnancies. This is true. Like, progesterone is used when you're on. I mean, there's a myriad of reasons why your doctor might give it to you to stabilize a pregnancy and make sure it comes to term when they're seeking to it. So they're thinking, hey, can you use that to after they've had the mifeprex, before they've taken the mifepristone, and all right, there we go. That they're supposed to basically tell them how it works and say so. All right. Then there's a bunch of record keeping stuff that they force them to do, and you have to have it on site and all that. Like, okay, there's a bunch of this shit. And a lot of the bill is definition stuff. So this is the stuff that's sort of onerous in it, and is crucial and kind of important. And they underlined it, and they made sure people noticed it. That the notice stuff about minors, where you have to tell their parents if they're getting an abortion, does not apply to any parent that has been enjoined by a domestic violence order, an interpersonal protective order, regardless of whether or not the person to be protected by the order was the minor, or been convicted of or entered into a diversion program for a criminal offense against the victim who is a minor as defined in this, or for a violent or sexual criminal offense under this. A copy of the minor's government issued ID, a copy of the consenting parents. This is the informed consent shall include. So if they are not criminals, or they weren't the one abusing them, and they've never been doing that, then you only can tell the parent. This is just like the Don't Say Gay bill. The Don't Say Gay bill, which is what everybody called it, has all these provisions in it because they know it will throw it out. They know it won't pass muster. So they put this stuff in there, and then they act like it's not in there for their voters, and then people on the left and Democrats react as if it isn't because nobody reads it. So there's a bunch of they go through this sort of they have. If you don't want to tell your parents, and you want to be emancipated, there's a hearing about it, and then the records are sealed and yada yada. That's let's see. Yeah, best interest of the minor or not, you can't afford it, like that kind of stuff. Like, they're trying to basically tighten off these other things. Now, the one area that it exists, and this is Kentucky, remember, is that part of what they're doing here is either whether you think they're being legit about it or not, or whether it's a regular portion of this, is that women who are trafficked are often forced or coerced into getting an abortion even when the baby is not from someone that they were, employed to have sex with. In the case of this, it might even be their own husband or boyfriend or somebody for real in their life. But whoever's controlling them, the person trafficking them, or even that person themselves, forces or coerces them into having the child. And so a lot of this is hoops around that to make it look like we're just protecting trafficking victims, right? So we're just adding all these rungs in the ladder to do this stuff, because who could argue against that? And that's true. So don't. The 2 or 3 parts in this that are onerous and will make it impossible will be either destroyed by the Supreme Court and the HIPAA rules, or interstate commerce, or the law around transporting medication over state lines to anybody who is unable to travel. So you can't, just like you have freedom of travel in the United States, you cannot be forced to travel, right? So that'll fall apart under that. The idea that it creates an onerous expense for some people, they could argue that the state has a responsibility. They have a constitutionally protected right to this, but the state is making it impossible for them to travel, and states shouldn't have separate laws for stuff that is legally available. That's it. Yeah, this is the Kentucky abortion law, or the attempt at it. This is the one that they overrode the veto. Also, this bill does allow for an abortion to save the life of the mother, or protect the health of the mother. If she is endangered, quote, by a physical disorder, illness, or injury. And that if they try to bust the physician for giving them a later abortion or one past the limit, that this is a protected class of this particular bill. They bury it in there. They don't. Here's the thing. Most of us would be like, oh, good. Okay, so that's in there. That alleviates some concerns. Still a dick move, but whatever. They don't want the anti-abortion community to know how many outs they had to put into this fucking thing. What about the BS law trying to rapists can sue for child custody? There are already 4 states that allow custodial rights to people convicted of sexual assault. Like the Carolinas, I believe Alabama. That again, that's just that's a dinner bell for like stalker level rapists. It's terrible. So anyways, yeah, so anybody who intentionally or knowingly fails to conform to a requirement of this law is guilty of a Class A misdemeanor. You have a year and a hearing to prove that you weren't or you didn't. So a lot of this stuff is, it's the rapist family right? Well, that's weird, but okay. Still very strange. We're going to unpack. Okay, so these are by sections. They go through, the varying degrees of which part are right and wrong. They were off by a number. They added a section in the middle, so they had to bump all the numbers. And then whoever was writing this misspelled ensure several times and wrote the word for the old person drink. And then they spend a lot of the bill defining it. But anyways, oh God, I'm sorry. I apologize for that. So I read through the whole thing this morning, along with the work I do. There we go. The case law around Cincinnati Region v. Taft, which is what brought to light the version of the Schaff technique, and that they need to be informed because it doesn't. Oh, and there's a thing. The other informed thing that they have to put in there is that you have to inform the mother who has, pregnancy complications where it might endanger her life, that she is Rh negative when the child is Rh positive, because that could kill her later in the pregnancy. And there's ways you can fix that. And so you have to inform the mother, like, by the way, the reason you're having problems and complications, why you may have miscarried before, why you're concerned that you might be able to, is because you're Rh negative. We did the test and we can treat it, which most women try anyways. This is like perfunctory. Again, they're acting like they've invented something to make it, the assumption in the bill is nobody's even asking if these women know that they're Rh negative, and of course they fucking are, especially at a place like Planned Parenthood. But they're trying to make them look like they don't even want these babies to live. Like that's how they're selling it. So that, yeah. So the Rh factor has to be dealt with. And then I brought this up to give you an idea, because some people may know my dad has kidney issues and has to do dialysis on occasion. And in this particular case, Kentucky's General Assembly has a series of laws, one of which is about Chapter 20, Regulation 18. This is about the law if you want to have a dialysis center. So this gives you some indication to baseline it against. And these are all they define all these people. And this wasn't contentious. They weren't fixing another law or adding another. This is just they licensed them, and this is what the standard was going to be. But to get a license, you had to have comply with all these things, develop and enforce written policies, and the administration and operation of the policy shall include personnel, practices, and procedures, job descriptions for each level of personnel, including authority, responsibility, classification, qualifications for the medical staff, medical care practices and procedures, prevention and control of hepatitis, peritonitis, and other infections, including appropriate procedures for surveillance and reporting of infections, housekeeping, handling and disposal of waste and contaminants, sterilization, disinfection. Okay, this is all the stuff they have to comply with if they're going to have a dialysis center. Okay, makes sense. They have to have a permanent site of operation. Can't move around. No moving dialysis centers in Kentucky. Which is weird because out in Appalachia, that would actually be a good thing. You roll in there with a fucking truck 2 times a week. Maintenance regularly scheduled hours. Maintain regularly scheduled hours during which dialysis services are available. Affiliation agreements. They make them a renal transplantation center agreement shall provide for medical and surgical specialty services. So they have to work with a transplant center. It's just like interactive. It's fine. They have to store patient care plans, the medical information for them, the information necessary, blah, blah, blah. Medical staff. They have to have personnel, adequate number, organization, where is it? Ethical and professional practices of its staff. There should be a medical director responsible for supervising the staff. The medical director shall be a full or part-time member. Here it is. The facility shall employ at least one full-time qualified registered nurse to be responsible for nursing services. If a patient is undergoing dialysis, a qualified registered nurse shall be on duty to oversee patient care. The facility shall also employ or have contracts for services with the following ancillary personnel: a qualified dietitian, a qualified medical records practitioner, a qualified social worker. And then they have to file incident expert. I thought it was very strange that these small government conservatives think that a dialysis center, not a renal specialist clinic, like where they're planning on getting people to get him ready for a kidney transplant or shit like that. But they have to have a social worker on staff at that place. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Good. If somebody has a moment and there's somebody there, cool. But it's interesting that's, this is another one. And if they don't have, and they have to have a qualified dietitian on there. That is there's too many fat people law in Kentucky that they're dealing with. They got to talk to these people about eating better, and you got to have a dietitian in there telling them to eat their veggies. That's basically what they're talking about, because they're trying to lower that cost by fixing people's problem in the first place. But then the qualified social worker part, both of those that's a government decision. Neither one of those are necessary for the function of a dialysis center. They just aren't. It's good that they're there. I don't have anything against it, right? This is not strange for Kentucky. Kentucky likes to, and a lot of southern states, for all this nanny state, we want small government bullshit. Obviously, as Diane said in the chat, small government that's in your twat. Yes, they want government so small it can be used as a vaginal suppository with a spyglass. That this is pretty normal for red states like Kentucky to micromanage and nanny patients on all fronts. Yeah, social workers for patient safety. Agreed. Yeah. But again, the best practices, something you'd want to have at a dialysis center. But making it a feature of law is just interesting that way. I think it's fascinating.